Everybody, it's Bible study time. Woo, yay, it is Bible study time. I am excited today about coming forward with a message for you all. This is an end of the year message for y'all today, and I've been really meditating on it. I have done some work yesterday in fine tuning it, and today I will be delivering on its totality to you. So super excited about that. As usual, you guys, if you find any of my content relevant, if you find it intriguing, thought-provoking, and you'd like to hear more of it, please support and click like. Please follow me on my social apps on Facebook and on YouTube, and subscribe and share the content. I look to deliver very informative and detailed, thought-provoking content for you so that you can marinate and rest with it and churn in the soil of your own mind, and maybe even offer up as a gift or as an offering to the children in your own way. We're going to be speaking today out of a couple of different books, okay? So I want to give you an understanding of what we're going to be doing today. This is the end of the year. I don't know if I will be doing another Bible study before the 1st of January, but whatever that Wednesday or Thursday is, that first Wednesday or Thursday of January is more than likely when I will resume my Bible studies, because I am prepping to take it to another level in the upcoming year. So, and then I have family things that I need to do for the holidays myself. So I need time for that. But today we will be discussing from a few different books. One, which is, of course, the King James Version of the Judeo-Christian Bible. We're going to be speaking out of 1 Samuel. And we're going to be hopping. We're going to hop from, we're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 17. All of it is in chapter 17. But we're going to go from verse 4 through verse 9. And then we're going to hop over to verse 32 and then touch and go between there and verse 48. And then we're going to cross-reference the book of Enoch, which is in the Apocrypha. If you all have it, if you don't, you can purchase the book of Enoch on its own, or you can just buy the complete apocryphic text, which holds all the books that were not added to the Judeo-Christian Bible. We're going to be speaking from the book of Enoch, and those chapters that I speak to today, I will reference at the time that I get ready to speak to them, because there's some that I might get to and some that I may not. But we're going to be speaking of the David and Goliath story, you all. But this is going to be a twist because, you know, I'm a thinker. I like to ponder perspectives, and I allow spirit to move within me and revealing to me other perspectives outside of what I may be getting from those that I watch really closely. So this is going to be that, and this is going to be a sum of our year. Hopefully it will give you ammunition, and it will give you motivation to begin to embark on new activities or maybe new ways of thinking for the year to come and then those thereafter. Okay, so let's start off with our prayer, you guys, and let's invoke the Spirit of God to direct me in the discernment of God's word. Heavenly Father and Mother, I come before you, your daughter. I love you. I come before you seeking you and everywhere I can within the text of this book and within life in general. I ask that you speak through me today. Allow your truth to flow through me so that I may speak it unto the children, giving us food, giving us your word as food, as nourishment, to sustain us in the many days to come, and most importantly, within our now. I love you so deeply, and I thank you. In God's name I pray, amen. All right. Okay, you guys. So I did a video yesterday, and I got all excited about it, and I had to redo it because things kind of reveal themselves in increments, right? So you don't want to just get all excited and do something and think, okay, this is it. No, that may be a precursor for something that you can expound upon in a better way. And so today I have put a lot of thought into this, and I'm just going to go into it. This message, this sermon is for people that are thinkers. It might be long. I don't know. I'm going to let Spirit move the way it moves, but I'd like for you to keep an open perspective, okay? This book of Enoch is a book that was in the original biblical canon of books, okay? All the books of the Bible are not the total amount of books that were discovered. There were other books discovered that were not added to the Bible, right? So this is just one of the other books that were not added. And I will be cross-referencing that book today as we move along through 1 Samuel. Because they all, the apocryphic books, when you read them in tandem to the Judeo-Christian Bible, make a lot of things make sense, because a lot of stuff in the Bible happens. You know, when you see David and Goliath and you're like, okay, this giant, and you're like, well, maybe they were just giants, and you don't know the history of what's going on. You don't get the total effect of what Scripture is trying to speak to you. And so that's the motivation of this conversation that I'm having with you today. All right, so what did I do with it? Okay, here we go. Okay, you guys. So we're in 1 Samuel, verse 4, chapter 17. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam. And his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. And one bearing a shield went before him. And he stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Am not I a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us. All right. We're going to skip over to verse 32. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight this Philistine. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go out against this Philistine to fight with him. For thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said to Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep. And there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out before him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. David said, Moreover, the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, Go, and the Lord be with thee. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put a helmet of brass upon his head, and he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off of him. And he took his staff in his hand, and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in a shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew unto David, and the man bare a shield, and a man that bare a shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and a ruddy and of a fair conscience. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou camest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield. But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, and the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into my hand, and I will smite thee and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcass of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all that the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all the assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and drew near to meet David, and David hastened and ran toward the enemy to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag, and he took thence a stone and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead. And the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine, and slew him. But there was no sword in his hand. There was no sword in the hand of David. I read that wrong. So I didn't read from 48. I actually went to 49, 50. I went to 50. So what we're talking about here is the story of David and Goliath. That is the main focus of my conversation today, but I'm going to have to give you a little perspective as to what is going on so you get the full spectrum of the story. I just read to you that David is in a valley. The children of Israel, Saul is king, and Saul is in a valley dealing with the Philistines. The Philistines have made a pact, I guess you could say, with a giant. The giant is named Goliath, and he is out of a place called Gath. Now, what many people don't realize is that these giants were, very prevalent upon the earth at this time, because these giants are the offspring of what the fallen angels did when they came down and mated with the women of earth. Goes back to Genesis. When the fallen angels came down, they mated with the women of the earth. They exposed spiritual knowledge and secrets to these women, and they created a bloodline. They created children. These children were giants. They were huge individuals because these angels were not of human DNA. They were of the angelic ethereal realm. They were energetic beings, and they came down here. They were down here anyway, because we seem to forget things that we read all the time in the Bible. These angels were here. If you look anywhere in the text, anywhere thus far that we have traveled throughout the book of the Bible, from Genesis to Exodus to Deuteronomy to Numbers to Joshua to Ruth to even Samuel, I mean, you name it, in Leviticus, everywhere in this book that we've gone through thus far, these angels have been paramount. These are the same type of angels that went to Gideon while he was in the wine press threshing wheat. These angels were sent by God to watch over the people, watch over the children. They were sent here as footmen that would come down and interact amongst the people as maybe a litmus test to see really what's going on with the people. So they were privy to everything. But there were a group of them that decided that they wanted to incarnate. They wanted to be gods in the earth. So when you see these angels And they say, oh, an angel came unto Gideon and told him to get up and go here because God is going to bless him. And when you see an angel go to Moses and speak to Moses, or when you see an angel come upon Solomon or any of these people, or Solomon's parents, and telling them that they're going to have a child, or Rebecca, and they tell them, it's so many times these angels, when you see Jacob wrestling with an angel, these are the angels. But there was a group of them that were coming down here doing the work of God, sending messages of God to the children, watching over the children. That's their job, is to watch. It's like the police of God. And the police of God, these angels, some of them decided that they were going to rebel. And they were going to do the unthinkable. And the unthinkable was that they were going to leave the heavenly realm and incarnate here in this realm as gods upon the earth. And so I want to speak to this. We already know what's going on with David. David is facing one of these angels' children. I just explained to you that the Nephalim, the fallen angels, created the Nephilim by mating with the women of earth. It's already there in Genesis. There was a flood that happened. But what did the flood do? The flood destroyed everything except what? It destroyed everything except for the descendants of Noah and all that was on the boat with Noah. And it destroyed everything outside of what is in the aquatic, the water. When you remember when Jesus spoke into the evil spirits to get out of the individual, and they said, well, let us go into these pigs because they need a vessel. Any kind of spirit needs a vessel. It just can't move effectively without being housed in a specific vessel. So Jesus allowed it to go into the pigs. And then what did the pigs do? They ran into the water and drowned. Think of the flood. God flooded the world. I'm going to speak to the flood in a minute, but God flooded the world. He bound the fallen angels and punished them, flooded the world. All that was left was Noah and what was on the boat with Noah. But then, after the flood, we're seeing time and time again, whether it's Og and Bashan and all of these giants, and it seems to me that these giants are prevalent in the Philistine area. This whole Canaan, the Levant, these giants are everywhere. So when you see the children leaving out of the wilderness to the promised land, and they're knocking all these people back, this is who they're fighting. They're fighting the Nephilim. When you see David fighting Goliath, I just read to you what Goliath had on his armor. Goliath had on a helmet of brass upon his head. He was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. He had greaves of brass upon his legs and a target of brass upon his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam. His spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went before him. This is symbolic and is very relevant to what we're talking about with the Nephilim and the fallen angels. The reason why God really punished the fallen angels, especially Azazel, is because he taught the children metalworking. Whether he intended it to be good or bad, it doesn't matter. He exposed them with this level of information. And they began, because before the angels fell and came and taught them these things, they didn't have swords and knives. These swords and knives are representative of the fallen angels. So whenever you see them, you know that these people are representative of the fallen angels' children. And what is happening is, just like anything else, it disrupts the organic component of the garden. So now when you see one group of people using swords and they're coming at you, attacking you, you're going to have to fight them with either another sword or something greater. So Goliath is coming forward with all of this technology. Because if you live back then, all of this stuff that Goliath had was unheard of. It was new. It was granted by way of the fallen angels. In order to make a helmet of brass and a coat of mail and all of these things, especially a sword, you got to know how to work with heat, and you have to know how to work with iron. Og, I believe it was Og, the king of Bashan, slept on a bed, Sihon, I can't remember, one of them, slept on a bed of iron. Do you know how hard it is to create a bed of iron? This is technological advancement. So what we're seeing is the equivalent of what would be today, someone coming upon you in your community with a robot. Just a robot that has a gun and a knife, and he's able to attack you and defeat you by way of, he has a computer as a brain. His eyes are able to pull up your visual and cross-reference it through various databases. He was, even though you might be a very strong and astute individual, this other technology that this thing is using somewhat has more of an advantage, because it can reference more information. It can protect itself better because it doesn't have skin. It's all iron. So this is what was happening here with David and Goliath, y'all. I'm going to speak to it. I'm going to go deeper. Let's go into the book of Enoch. Let's go to chapter 6. I'm going to touch on this. I did this before. You can look at my other video on my YouTube page. I spoke to the book of Enoch and the fallen angels. And it says here, and it came to pass when the children of man had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels and the children of heaven saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. And Simjazah, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty for a great sin. And they all answered, said to him, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. And then swore they all together, and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And they were all in 200. All of them were amounted to 200. And who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called it Mount Hermon because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. All right. Now, what I want to get to you, what I need for you to understand is, so Israel has transgressed against God. The flood has happened. God has pressed reset. But there are still remnants of the children of the fallen angels, because obviously they have some sort of relationship with the water. I'm going to tell you why. Let me finish reading. Chapter 7 of the book of Enoch. And all the others took together with them unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one, and they began to go in unto them and to defile themselves with them. And they taught them charms and enchantments and cuttings of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose heights were 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. that the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. Then the earth laid accusations against the lawless ones. Okay? So listen to me. I'm just going to finish so you get a full perspective. Chapter 8. And Azazel taught man to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, which is kind of like chemistry's science, and the beautifying of eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all the coloring tinctures. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. Semjaza taught enchantments and root cuttings. Amaros, the resolving of enchantments. Barachiel taught astrology. Kokabel, the constellations. Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds. Arachiel, the signs of the earth. Shamsiel, the signs of the sun. Sariel, the course of the moon. And as men perished, they cried, and their cry went up to heaven. They start crying out to God. I keep telling you, these children cry out, God hears them. Don't you ever think God does not know what's going on around here. God is a God. God is a long-term God. I'm telling you. And this God of Israel is not no joke. You have a mighty God because you are of a mighty house. Okay. So I just spoke to you the fundamentals of what has happened. These angels came down. They were here on business because God sends angels unto the children to act as representatives of God, either to get information on what's going on amongst the children or to send messages. God does not come down. He sends his angels down. God is a God that delegates. So these angels are walking around the earth and they see everything that's going on. They're like, darn, we could live good down here. I mean, these people don't know anything. Before the angels came, these people didn't know how to really hunt. I'm sure they were making tools with stones, but there was no technology that they used to cut the stone. They cut the stone with rocks. So they're out there hunting in the field, and they're obviously a strong group of people, because in order to hunt without technology, you really have to be strong. You can't be, the technology weakens you. Technology does not strengthen you in any way at all. It weakens you. But when you have to really go out and kill what you eat and wrestle with it, you are strong and you are capable. This is David. David we are looking at the old way versus the children of the Nephalim right here in this book of 1 Samuel, speaking to David and Goliath. That's all this is. Israel is in a distressed state as usual because Israel cannot keep the promises that they've made to the God of Israel by obeying the covenant. So the God of Israel allows them to go into bondage and into a deep pit of just lowliness. They are at the bottom of the totem pole amongst all nations. As I said before and time again, these children have gone into bondage amongst all the nations that they defeated. It's personal. It's personal amongst the nations because they defeated them. And it's personal to Israel because they even though many of them are transgressing against the God of Israel, they still remember all the stories that their elders have told them about the greatness that this God of Israel did amongst their ancestors. What was the promise? What did God tell Moses to do? What did God tell Joshua to do? What was the law? The law. Remind these children of what I did when I led you to lead them out of Egypt. Remind them of all the wonders that I did while they were in the wilderness. Remind them how I made a way for them out of no way. I did all of these things to get them to buy in. I need them to have faith. And the only way that you have faith in a thing is if you walk through a lot with it, friend. You don't have faith through things just by good times. See, good times is really it can be a catch-22. Yeah, we all love the good times, but the good times don't make us great in the bad times. The bad times, friend, is when you need something to pull from. The bad times is when you got to remember all of those promises. You have to remember all of those stories you heard your ancestors, your grandmother and your great-grandmother and your grandfather. You hear all of those things that they came through, and you say, I ain't got no right to sit up here and pout about this. Those people wish they had it as good as I do, and I'm sitting up here complaining because I lost a job or because somebody don't like me. This is what history does. This is what knowing your culture does. It makes the root grow deep so that when the winds blow, you're not just uprooted. This was what God told Moses and told everybody that led the children to remind them of. This is what David is fired up over. So what has happened is David has walked into a situation. His dad called him and said, look, go up and see what's going on amongst the armies of Israel. Check on your brothers, because all his brothers were up there. And David was just out in the field with his sheep, minding his flock. And he said, okay, he goes and he does what his dad tells him to do. And when he walks up, he hears this Goliath, this Philistine giant, the children of the Nephalim. So you got to know that David knows this history probably better than all of us nowadays knows, because he is a descendant of these generations. He is a descendant of all of them that came off of the boat of Noah. He's a descendant of all of them that came out of Egypt. God told these people to be reminded all of the time of this. So it's embedded in them. And he walks up and he sees this one-eyed giant with all of this technology of the children of the Nephilim. All of this technology, brass helmet, all of this kind of stuff, all started with the Nephilim. The children did not have any of this before the Nephilim came and imposed this upon them. So David is looking at it like, oh, he's out here disrespecting the culture. He's disrespecting Israel. He's disrespecting the ancestral line. He's disrespecting us as an army. He's talking and chanting about us and our low state. And he's saying, where is your God? Where's your God? That you all have said was so great, but look at you. You're pitiful. You're a bunch of nobodies. Where is your God? And David comes to Saul. And David says, don't let this man make you afraid. He said, David said unto Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. Now, at the time, Saul's army is all in the valley with him. All of his captains, all his generals, Saul himself, even the children, the women and the children, people out there, like, what are we going to do with this giant? The reason why they were so dismayed is because this giant represented something. It was bigger than just Goliath. This is the child of the Nephilim. This is a child of the fallen angels. And this is all their region. So when you see Goliath coming towards David, when they begin to get ready to fight, there is an individual in front of him with a shield. This is symbolic. David is standing with 5 stones and a slingshot and a stick. This is representative to the old way. And Goliath is coming with a shield, a head of brass, and all kind of armor on his arms and his legs. This is representative to the technological advancements of the Nephilim that they gave to the children of the earth, which brought upon havoc upon the earth. These same giants were renowned. I just read to you. They were renowned in the earth for eating people. It says here in Book of Enoch, chapter 7, verse 4. The giants turned against them and devoured mankind, and began to sin against the birds and the beasts and the reptiles and the fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. This is why they're afraid. This is it. It's not about Goliath per se. It's what Goliath represented. The man that went before Goliath. Goliath is now, see, Goliath, the Nephalim, God cursed them. All of the children of the watchers, all of their seed, God cursed, and they are known as evil. I will read this to you. And he says, and that all the children of men may not perish through all the secret things which the watchers have disclosed and have taught their sons. And the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. They're corrupted because they're going to war with each other with these swords and these knives and breastplates and all this kind of stuff. To him ascribe all sin. All sinliness, all sin is ascribed to Azazel. And to Gabriel, said the Lord, proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, and against the children of fornication, and destroy the children of fornication and the children of the watchers from amongst men. And send them one against the other, that they may destroy each other in battle. For length of days shall they not have, and no request that they make of these shall be granted unto the fathers on their behalf. For they hope to live an eternal life, and that each one of them will live 500 years. But that's not what I wanted you to hear. What I wanted you to hear was, okay, so the Nephilim are bound to earth. These are the children of the fallen angels and the women of earth. They are bound to earth. They are what God condemned as evil spirits. So when you see David looking at this, David knows exactly what this is. He knows that this is really a turning point, because now the children, all of them, have fallen so low. They are idol worshiping. They have gone against the God of Israel, all the laws. There's no real unity amongst Israel. Israel is living amongst the nations. They're broken. But there are some of them that are still in alignment with God, with the God of Israel. There are some of them that still honor the old way, and David is one of them. And I'll tell you why. Because the scripture shows it here. It says here. So Saul tells David, okay, you can go out and fight with this guy from with this Philistine, the Philistine giant Goliath. For Saul to say that was a big deal, because you got to know what's on the line. If Israel lost this war, Israel's already in a bad place. But really, if Israel would have lost this war, Israel would have been in even a worse shape, because Israel would have had to serve the Philistines. I'm talking about, and when I'm talking about serving the Philistines, I just told you what these people were about. The Philistines made a pact with the children of the Nephilim. In order for this giant Goliath to be waging war on behalf of the Philistines, there must have been some sort of relationship. This tells me that there was a relationship between Goliath and the Philistines. And Goliath was not the only giant. David, I'm willing to bet money, David has heard stories of other nations fighting against these giants. These giants were prevalent. We just saw how the children left out of Canaan and out of the area of Og and Bashan and was it the Acronyms or Analogs? I can't remember. But all of these areas where there was nothing but giants. These giants were prevalent. So I'm sure there have been stories told of how these giants and regular humans fought, and there probably was a technique that you could utilize to overcome them. David throwing a rock and hitting it in his head probably wasn't by happenstance. You see, when you're in a situation like David was in, you don't use techniques that you hope will work. You use stuff that you know. You use tried and true techniques. Listen to this. 1 Samuel 17, verse 39. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off of him. Saul had given David the same kind of technology that the giant Goliath had, because that's what's happening now. The fallen angels have opened up portals in the mind. These children are creating all kind of weaponry of war, and in order for the nations to compete against one another or even to protect themselves from one another, now they have to adopt the same kind of technologies. So Israel now has these technologies also. They have armor, they got brass, they got all of this stuff too. And this was the problem, because the watchers corrupted the whole garden with an idea or ideas. And it's taking hold and it's multiplying. So David's like, no, this is not what I do, because I'm a son of Jesse, and we don't do that. We ascribe to the old law. But what I do is I know how to throw these rocks, bruh. I know how to get at you with these rocks. I don't need none of that technology from the fallen angels. Y'all can lean on that. But what I can do, I can use my intellect. I can use my skill that God ordained me with as a man. And I can use this anointing that Samuel put on me. And I can go forward with this. So it says here, and he took off his staff in his hand. And he took his staff in his hand and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook and put them in a shepherd's bag, which he had even in a kris. And his sling was in his hand. And he drew near to the Philistine. And the Philistine came on and drew near to David. And the man that bare the shield went before him. Because the Philistine is of the earth. God made it that way. He told all of the fallen angels that they cannot have no wives because of what they did. They made it. What the problem initially was, they found the women of the earth beautiful. This is what provoked them to sin. And they laid up under these women, and they began telling them things and giving them information that they shouldn't know. Could you imagine it? Women of the earth back then. And here comes these watchers that can bless them and help them with life. They come and make life easier. And so you know these women were probably all up under them. Oh, tell me this, tell me that. I want to know this. Can you do this prayer for me? Can you do that for me? Can you do? And they're probably like, no, I'm going to show you how to do them for yourself, because I'm tired of you keep coming and asking me for stuff. So these women were the ones that got the spiritual knowledge first. This all goes back to Adam and Eve, friend, but I'm not going to go there. But with David, when the Philistine came forward, he came with another man in front of him with a shield. That representative of a god. That is their father. That is the fallen angel. The God that their father that came before them was their shield. Because why would Goliath need a shield? This is a huge giant. This is a giant that has both spiritual power and physical prowess. How could he not have spiritual power if your father is a if your father is a fallen angel? This same fallen angel is a group of people that provided all the spiritual knowledge to the women of the earth. So why wouldn't they give it to the children? Okay. And the Philistine looked about and saw David. He disdained him, for he was but a young man, and ruddy, rough, and of a fair conscience. He didn't look good. He didn't keep up his look. See, when you really are about something, when you really have something tangible to offer, when you really are who you know yourself to be, you don't really put a lot of effort into impressing people with the aesthetics. You don't. The only time somebody really wants to impress you with the aesthetics is when you got to make up for something. I need to make this look better because I'm lacking over here. Most times when people are really who they know themselves to be, and when they know what they have to offer, they don't put a lot of time and attention into the aesthetics. But what he did do, I'll keep reading. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves? He come to me with sticks. And the Philistine cursed David's gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with the sword and with the spear. Remember what I told you. Azazel. Thou comest to me with the sword and with the spear, and with the shield. But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. It says it right there. Right there. Go to 47. And all the assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, but for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. David did all that with what the children had to work with before the fallen angels came. This was a war against the way the children were before the fallen angels came, and the fallen angels' children and their technology. David smote Goliath with 5 smooth stones. Actually, one of 5 smooth stones that he took out of the brook. How does a stone get smooth? Because water runs over it. Over time, it just smooths it out. He didn't need technology to make the stone smooth. The stones became smooth through the progression of time, through the natural way. David did all of that with a slingshot and an anointing. I wanted to bring this up to you guys today because we're at the end of the year, you know, and we're at the end of the year and we're embarking upon the newness of a new year. And I know many of us lean on technology more than ever nowadays. I mean, technology has become just a way of life. But all of this has to do with a lot of things from ancient times, a lot of stuff that we can't reverse. See, once an idea is planted in the mind, you cannot unknow it. You know it. And by nature, it multiplies itself. There are many ideas and perspectives that we all have that we either can shine light on and allow them to grow and allow them to feed us, or we can allow them to stay in the recesses of the mind and not show any attention to, thus rendering them inactive. We're approaching a new year where we know what we've come out of in this last year or the years before. All of the things of the past have now made themselves manifest in our life now by way of our attention. What can we take forward from this today and embark upon in our tomorrow that will serve us. See, just like these children and all of their technology that they adopted from the children of the fallen angels, God is showing metaphorically through this David and Goliath story that it's not the technology that has the power. God can work through the natural aspects of things that we have innately within us. The technology surely, absolutely, can be used to put an emphasis on it, to maybe even expand the reach of it. But what natural talents and what natural gifts that come naturally, that have been with us all along our path, that we can pull from and use, that were our gifts from the beginning that we came here to express, that can bless our lives and the lives of others. This is David and Goliath. David didn't need to take a class on how to use the slingshot. David always had a slingshot with him. Even in the end of this story, in the end of this chapter, when David defeats Goliath and he's carrying this armor that Saul gave to him out of love, because Saul was actually looking to help David be successful. Saul gave David what he thought would help him be successful and to increase his odds of success. But David, after defeating Goliath, grabbed up Saul's armor that he gave him and went and put it in his tent and went out amongst his brethren in celebration of the victory that he and his people were experiencing. Saul didn't even recognize David. He's like, where is the guy that defeated Goliath? And who is this person? And his captain's like, you know what? I don't know who this is, but I will find out. And he went and he came upon David and saw that David had Saul's head in his hand. And he brought him before David had Goliath's head in his hand. And he brought him before Saul. And Saul asked him, who are you? And that was perplexing to me, because it's like, okay, look, either Saul had some mental problems where he was not, able to remember things for long periods of time, or maybe he had a lot going on. Maybe he had a drinking problem, or maybe he smoked a lot of marijuana or something, and he couldn't keep a memory of things. But he didn't recognize David, because, and the more I thought about that, I thought, well, why wouldn't he recognize David? Because David had many faces. David had many gifts. When Saul first came upon David, David was the psalmist. He's a musician. He's playing the psalm to help Saul soothe away the demon. And then he acts as an armor bearer. And then now he is a warrior. And in the last verse of the chapter, it says, and Saul said unto him, whose son art thou, thou young man? And David answered him, I am the son of thy servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite. Friend, at the end of this year, this is the end of the year. End of the year. We're embarking on a new year. We're letting go of stuff that do not serve us. I know it's hard. It's hard to let it go, especially when you're going through it still. It's a process. I understand it. But I'm letting go of stuff that does not serve me. And I'm making room for things that do. I am capitalizing on all my natural talents. Not things that I got to learn new. I'm capitalizing at this stage in my life on things that I have been pondering all along my path thus far. And I'm bringing them to the forefront. Just as David. These things come to the forefront not because we want them to, but because God finds that it's time for them to come forward. David didn't bring all of these gifts forward because he wanted them to come forward, whether it be his gift of the solitary. They came forward because Saul sent for him. He heard about him through word of mouth and sent for him. Him defeating Goliath didn't come forward because it was some sort of contest and he was going to win the top prize. Because even though with this Goliath conflict, and it said that, whoever defeats him would be head of the house of Israel, and he'll get the daughter of Saul and all this kind of stuff. So David, that wasn't David's thing. David wasn't about trying to flex in that way. David came into a situation where what he loved was being challenged. His love for his people was being challenged by these wicked children of the fallen angels. And he did what he knew he could do. He said, well, you know what? There's a chance that he does defeat me, but I don't believe he can. You ever had a feeling in you, even if it didn't look like you was going to make it, and nobody else believed that you could do it, there was something in you that knew you could? That's what David had when he approached Goliath and when he spoke to Saul. David said, I wrestled with a bear and a lion. He said, this bear and lion came into my father's camp and took one of our lambs. David come from a poor family, friend. Israel is in a distressed state. Israel is poor right now. And I went out after him and smote him and delivered it out of his mouth. He took the animal, wrestled with it, and took it out of his mouth. The animal hadn't even been eaten. He out there in the bush wrestling with a lion and a bear and took it back. He took back what was taken from his father before it could be devoured. It just said that. You don't get to that by trying to prove a point. You don't get to that by high signing and trying to look like. You get to that, friend, through love. You get to that through the non-negotiables. What are the non-negotiables in your life? Now that we are at the end of this year, what is for sale and what could never be compromised? David loves his people. David is a family man. David has character. Some stuff you can't have. Some stuff is priceless. That's David. And that's the message of this. This is a many messages. This is a message of honing in on your gifts, friend. This is a message of now. This is a message of take some inventory of what matters to you. Technology is great. It can be used to your benefit or it can be used to your demise. But too much of anything ain't good for you ever. What comes naturally to you? What do you love? And what can you maximize off of that will bless you and all of your non-negotiables? We are loved more than we will ever know. I will never stop telling you that. That is a fact. That is a fact. This is my end of the year Bible study. All is well. As I said earlier, I hope I might drop one more this week coming, but I cannot say for sure. I'm gonna let the water flow, and whichever way it flows, that is the direction I'll go with it. But I will definitely be speaking with you all in the first of this upcoming year, that first Wednesday. I look to have more poignant and resourceful content for you as the months and days progress in the new year. I love you. You're worthy. You're enough. You got everything you need right inside of you. It is not an outside game. It is all internal. Peace and love.